Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hello and welcome to Learning to Glow, everyone. We have episode 98 today with guest Kelly Smith. She is the founder of Yoga for You and the host of the Mindful in Minutes podcast. Kelly shares today how we can use meditation to help in so many areas of our lives. She shares what the vagus nerve is and how our nervous system health can be affected through lifestyle and so much more. Kelly was absolutely amazing, and I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. It's such a timely one, too, with the holidays coming up, because she shares some really quick and easy tools that we can use to help with this. Thank you to Kelly, and make sure to check her out. I will link all of her info in the show notes. She's got an amazing podcast, so I would definitely check that out as well. On another note, tomorrow is Thanksgiving here in the U.S., and our Black Friday sale begins at midnight on the 29th. This is our biggest sale of the year, so make sure you check out simplyjessskincare.com for 30% off. This is one time a year I do this. It's a huge, huge discount. It's such a great value, so make sure you check us out. If you are listening and the sale is over, I want to offer that we give a coupon code for our podcast listeners exclusively. It is code podcast at checkout. So you can use that one time if you are listening to this and are feeling sad that you missed the Black Friday sale. You can still get 20% off with that coupon code. But if you are listening to this and it's before Black Friday and our sale is still going on, you do not need a coupon code at checkout. The entire line is 30% off. We also have free shipping for orders over $50 in the U.S. We only ship in the U.S. currently. And just thank you for shopping small this holiday. Our line makes a really great gift. If you have any questions about what's best for someone in your life or yourself, send us a message. Thank you again. Thank you for being here. And here is Kelly. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Learning to Glow. We have Kelly Smith with us today. Welcome to our show.
Hi, Jess. How are you doing?
I'm so good. I'm so happy that you're here with us today. And one of my favorite topics, we're going to talk about reducing stress and all of the magical ways that you help people do that. And you have a really great podcast, and you're a yoga and meditation teacher. I would love if you could just tell us a little bit about you and what you do, and then we can take it from there.
Absolutely. So I'm Kelly Smith. I am the founder of Yoga for You, which is a location-independent yoga and meditation school. I am the host of the Mindful Minutes podcast, which is pretty much all guided meditations. I like to refer to myself as like the meditation gateway drug. So I love to help people feel better in just like a few minutes and really simple, easy, like down to earth ways. I love beginners. I love everyone to come over and meditate with me, but I really like to create these simple practices that are short, easy to follow, and just improve our everyday lives through like this little micro habit of meditation. And then I'm also a author of 2 books, one called You Are Not Your Thoughts, which is all about meditation and anxiety, and then Meditation for the Modern Family. So those who want to weave meditation into their family system. And I just love helping people feel better and feel less stressed and more connected to themselves. And that's like my life's purpose.
Oh, I love that. And I'm a very intuitive person, and I pick up energy very well, and I can tell why you're good at what you do just by like the few minutes that we've known each other here. Have you been doing this for a long time? How did you find this work? Was it yoga first and then meditation, or tell us a little bit about that?
It was yoga first. So I started practicing yoga when I was like, before I could even drive. It was for cross training for my sports. I was an athlete into college, but I used to be a Shavasana skipper. So I have had quite a journey.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? We're part of the cool club, I think. I used to be so bold being like 14 years old, taking my yoga class, thinking the point of it was to like stretch and work out at the same time. And then as soon as we hit the mat for Shavasana, I just would roll up my mat and I'd be out of there because I thought like, what a waste. What's the point? And the thing is that no one really taught me what's the point. And I had this misconception, like so many people do, that yoga is all about the stretch, or like meditation is just like doing nothing, or even Shavasana is like wasteful, or like that's what I thought of it as. And I was like, why would I do this? Like I've got, I'm living life. I want to get these 5 minutes, back in my day, do something quote productive. And it wasn't until people started to educate me on the purpose of it that I started to see it for what it really was. And then this big turning point for me was when I was 16 and my mom was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And I was one of her primary caregivers. And we had done yoga together before, but this was something where it was like we had to explore the softer side. Her oncologists were saying like visualization is good for your white blood cell count. All of these, really interesting things I started to learn about sort of the softer side of yoga, restorative yoga, instead of like, my hot power vinyasa class that I loved. Turning inward, checking in, like, how am I feeling? How am I doing? Anyone who's been a caregiver out there, it's really hard. And you have to care for yourself so that you can then also be that caregiver that you want to be for someone else. And I found myself really exploring, I didn't know it at the time, but exploring things like mindfulness, meditation, intentional introspection through that process. And I don't know, yoga and meditation have just always been like this life raft for me during the hardest times. And that went through college. Then I did the typical, I graduated college with a degree in psychology, haven't done a thing with it, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I did what so many people do when they don't know what they want to do with their life, and they take a yoga teacher training, which is what I did. And I remember telling my mom, the same mom, so her story has a happy ending because she's still with us, and now she is the beautiful grandma to my kids. But I remember telling her, we were driving in the car and I was like, Mom, I know that we just spent all this money on this college degree and all of that, but I feel like I want to be a yoga teacher. And I just remember her turning to me and being like, if that's what your heart is telling you to do, you need to do it. And she was so supportive in that moment. And I always just felt this pull to teach yoga. And then that eventually led to meditation. As I learned more about it, as I started to dabble in it, when I started teaching it more, my students were asking about it. And that's kind of kicked it all off. And that was like 10 years ago. And it's just evolved. And I've felt this pull to really move more towards meditation because I just feel like it's this beautiful tool that we can have to not only reduce our stress, calm our nervous systems, care for ourselves, but also to connect with ourselves. Because that's something that's been the most beneficial in my journey, is like connecting with the self and having these tools to turn inward.
Oh, Kelly, I love this. I cannot relate to you more. I have when you said I was a Savasana skipper. Yes. Like, who has time for this? I remember laying on my mat. I'm a rule follower, so I did stay till the end of class, but I would be laying on my mat and being like, when is this over? Like, let's go. It was so hard for me to sit still with my thoughts and with my body. And I could so relate to that. And I also graduated with a psychology degree and did nothing with it. Instead of going to yoga training, I went to get my esthetician license, which was like the best thing I could have ever done, like literally. But I would love to talk about, you were never taught why. Why should we take this time, and why should we have this quietness and this reflection? You said, it was just, let's roll up the mat and get out of here. But let's talk about why it's important. And I know, I want to talk about, because you did mention the nervous system. And I know that's more of a hot topic these days because it's so important. I mean, even just before, we've talked about this just last week about when you eat your food, in order for it to digest, you have to be in a more relaxed state. So I would love if you could if we could start there, like, why is this important? Why is Savasana important? Like, what are the benefits?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's so many benefits. And the thing is when it comes to benefits, it's really about learning the one that resonates with you. So I love science. And so I love knowing that even taking those few minutes, and anyone who's unfamiliar with like Shavasana or sometimes Savasana, just depend, how you pronounce it, is those last few minutes at the end of a yoga class. You lay on your back, or maybe you sit in a meditative position, and the instructor may lead you through a little bit of anything, some breath, a visualization. They may also just leave you to kind of be there to rest. The initial thought when it comes to Shavasana is that's where you're really soaking up the benefits of your practice. It's like you just did all this work. Hopefully you were really present, really intentional with your movement, and now you're kind of resting and letting all of those benefits soak in. That's kind of what you'll see or hear in the yoga world. I like to take it a step further, and I'm like, but tell me more. Like, what am I soaking up? And so Shavasana is so good for allowing you to not only turn inward and take inventory of what's happening within you and around you. And like you just said, Jess, you sit there and you're like, okay, now it's just here, me and my thoughts. Like, what do I do? And it can feel kind of scary, but it's a great time to be able to just notice your thoughts without judgment. It's also beautiful for things like your blood pressure. When we're in that more rest and digest state, that's where our immune system is replenishing itself. So our immune system all day long, whether we're sick or not, working all day on the front lines. And then it's when we have these restful moments that it can replenish itself. Get kind of more of those troops to the front line, if you will. It's good for our heart health. It's also good for circulation. It's good for even like the aging of our skin. If you basically think about everything that happens when you're doing too much, you're burnt out, you're going a million miles an hour all the time, right? Our body starts breaking down. We feel really anxious. Our thoughts are racing. Shavasana and meditation is like the opposite of that. So it's going to help you slow down. It's going to help your body, even the tissues of your body regenerate. All of these things happen in the rest and digest state as opposed to the fight or flight or activated state. So that's a lot of the why. And then the philosophical is you're soaking up the benefits of your practice, and then you're metaphorically dying. Shavasana means corpse pose. And so it's this idea that at the end of a yoga practice, you're kind of like dying. And then when you leave, you're being reborn. So you have the opportunity to then walk out of the studio or the gym. I was taking yoga classes at the gym. Listen to this, Jess. Not only would I roll up my mat and leave, I would do this so I could go take those 5 minutes before like my mom would pick me up to run on the treadmill. Like as fast as I'd be like, I could probably get half a mile. Like, tell me you're doing too much without telling me you're doing too much. But you're doing all of these things where you can slow down, you can be present, you're getting these physical benefits, and then you're metaphorically dying to the practice so that you can leave the studio being, quote, reborn, or being able to just start anew. We call it both a yoga practice and a meditation practice. And this always resonates with me because it's easier to feel calm and present and connected when you're on your mat or you're meditating. That's the practice. But what about when, your kid, I have 2 kids, 1 and 3, right? So they know, even as a meditation teacher, anyone listening who has toddlers, they can drive you to like the brink of insanity, and you're like peeking over the edge of like, am I about to lose it? And they know how to just give you that little nudge over the edge where you're like, okay, that's it. I'm going to lose it here. Or, you're driving and someone cuts you off, or you're at work and you have this really stressful work component of your life. That's the actual application of the, quote, practice that we do on the mat when we're meditating. So that's why we call it a practice. But those are some of my favorite benefits.
I love that. I had a teacher once that said, the real work is when, exactly what you said, when you're getting cut off in traffic and you've left the mat. That's where yoga comes in, and that's where you get to really apply it. Like you said, I think that really stuck with me, because it's not just like, let's be Zen here for 5 minutes. Let's keep it with us. Let's take it with us throughout our day and our lives, which I love. So I want to talk a little bit more about the nervous system too. And because you started telling us some of the benefits, and one of I don't think a lot of people may know a lot about is the vagus nerve, which helps with all of this with our nervous system. If you could talk to us about how that works. And this is just, I feel like for a lot of people, when you have the information, it's so much more helpful. It's like us in yoga back in the day when we were young versus now. It's like, I would have never spent time taking a restorative yoga class. And now that is my absolute favorite type of class, but it's because I know why.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And the vagus nerve, the nervous system, 2 of my very favorite things in the world. And so nerdy to be like, the vagus nerve, our 10th cranial nerve, and my personal favorite. It's like,
I love it.
I mean, it's like so nerdy of me, but it's so true, because the vagus nerve in particular. So kind of zooming out, if you don't mind, Jess, before we go into the vagus nerve, kind of just like nervous system overview and meditation so that we can have some context for this specific nerve. So when we think about, we have our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight, parasympathetic is rest and digest. I remember it because it's like sympathetic nervous system and stress both start with the letter S, and that's how I kind of remember it in my own mind. Our bodies are designed to have this fight or flight response for about 90 seconds. So if you think back to, caveman days or even today, I happen to live in Minnesota, so this is an example that sticks in my mind. But if I were up north hiking, I'm going on a hike and all of a sudden a bear crosses my path, my body is going to go into this fight or flight. It's going to see the bear, it's going to respond. And immediately my brain, the amygdala, which is like the pain, fear, worry, anxiety center of the brain, it's going to go, oh, danger, red alert, I need to survive. And it's going to kick off this fight or flight mechanism. So things like my heart rate's going to elevate. I might start sweating. I'm going to get butterflies in my stomach because it's actually a rush of blood going to your extremities because, I don't know, maybe I have to like wrestle this bear. So my arms better get ready. I'm going to have to run away fast. My legs better get ready. Pupils dilate. All of these things to prepare me for whatever's going to happen with this bear. And that should be resolved within about 90 seconds, right? Either I ran away and then I'm like, whew, oh my gosh, I made it. I'm safe. Or the bear continued walking. And I'm like, oh, that was a close one. I'm safe. Maybe I got eaten. And so it's a non-issue anymore. I don't know. But whatever happens in that situation, it should be just for that moment. And then when the threat has passed, we should start moving away from that fight or flight and back into more of either like a homeostasis or more of a rest and digest. The problem is our bodies can't distinguish between these actual threats and what we perceive to be threats. Those can be things like uncomfortable conversations, worrying about things, again, once I became a mother, my capacity to worry increased by like tenfold, just thinking about distressing things that will probably never happen, but yet you still worry about them happening, seeing something upsetting on the news, all of these different things, our body still perceives as that bear. So it'll have the same physiological response, sweating, anxious, nervous, heart racing, all of that. And what can happen is our bodies and our brains start to adapt. So the amygdala actually gets bigger and stronger. It starts firing faster and it'll give you a bigger response because it says, oh my gosh, there's danger everywhere. I need to be on high alert. And so as we continue to adapt, we start getting these bigger and faster physiological responses to these stress and anxiety triggers. And our nervous system is just adapting, doing what it thinks it needs to do. So that's the one piece. Then when we think about our rest and digest, we're not really spending a lot of time actually trying to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's going to be the opposite of that bear. That's like, I'm chilling at the beach. I feel great. No threats here. Just listening to the waves, enjoying the sunshine, right? My heart is not racing. I feel calm. I can even maybe close my eyes because I don't feel like I have to be looking around, looking for a threat. All of this, we don't spend enough time intentionally activating the parasympathetic nervous system or the rest and digest, and we're just chronically in this fight or flight. Our bodies adapt, and then they just get into this always heightened and chronic activated state. So with that as context, when we talk about the vagus nerve, again, my personal favorite cranial nerve, it plays a crucial role in activating that rest and digest state. It also, again, a cranial nerve, so as it implies, it is from the brain, but it plays a key role in the mind-body connection. So it's a bilateral nerve that begins at our brain. It moves through both sides of your neck, kind of right by your throat, and then continues down and actually ends in your gut. So it connects your mind and body. And also if we think about kind of that gut brain, because we know a lot of how we feel is actually coming from our gut as well. And it's a very superficial nerve, so very close to the surface of the skin. And by learning how to activate that nerve in very simple, short ways, it's almost like a light switch where you can then try to switch off the fight or flight and switch on the rest and digest. And it can help us to slowly but surely start to move out of this kind of chronic fight or flight and move more towards rest and digest in the moment. And then over time, it can help support that as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, I love that. That's a really good breakdown of that. And so now that we know that we can intentionally work on this and that we need to do that, especially because we're so bombarded. I mean, I feel like overstimulation is the theme this year. There's just so much, especially with this election. There's so much like coming at us, and there's so much stress, and it's like just by picking up our phones, we're feeling that. We're feeling overstimulated, like I said, but also there's a lot of anxiety too. And I know that's something that you talk about in your book. I guess the first question would be, how do we do this? How do we like work on intentionally activating the vagus nerve? And I know it's through meditation, but talk to us more about that. Like, how do we do it? And I love that you talk to a lot of beginners, because I have to say, I talk to a lot of women and they're very intimidated by meditation. They straight up say, I don't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it, is what they say. Because
Mhm.
I think what they think is that I need an hour. I need, so much time. I'm not supposed to have any thoughts. My brain should be completely clear. So I think maybe we could talk, use this time to talk to those people, to the beginners with meditation, and like, how do we start? Because it seems super overwhelming, especially if you have a preconceived notion of what it's supposed to look like.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for opening the door for maybe what is my second favorite conversation, which is preconceived notions about meditation
Yeah.
and myths and lies you've been told about meditation. So, if
Good.
you're okay with it, Jess, I'd love to start there
Yes.
and then go into vagus nerve. So, or specific like activation practices. So, here's some of the more common ones. You highlighted a bunch of them already, Jess. And I talk to women as well and men, and they'll say either I don't, but more commonly, and this happens at just like whatever, a dinner party or a play date with my kids, and people find out what I do. And usually it's, I tried meditation once, but, and then fill in the blank, but my mind was too busy, but I didn't like it, but I listened to one app and I didn't like the voice of the person, but I don't have 30 to 60 minutes every day, but I have bad knees. I can't sit crisscross applesauce, whatever it is. So it's either I could never meditate because, and then fill in the blank, or I tried it once and didn't like it because, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And I love hearing these things because not only did I already said I was a Shavasana skipper. I never thought I could be someone who would meditate. I have both ADHD and dyslexia. Like, technically my brain isn't super wired to be good at meditation. However, one of the best things for me is meditation. And when people tell me, oh, my brain is too busy or I have ADHD, I couldn't do that. That's like saying you're too dirty to take a shower. It's like, how are we going to remedy this situation? So some of the more common myths are going to be that you have to sit for 30 to 60 minutes every day. This is false. Studies tell us that 8 to 12 minutes a day of meditation is enough for the physical, mental, emotional benefits of meditation. Another common misconception is that meditation is against my religion. And I love to talk about this one because I do hear it a lot and I want to hold space for that because no one is going to ask you in the meditation world to do anything that you feel uncomfortable with. There's also a misconception that meditation itself is a religious practice. It's not. Meditation is single pointed concentration. So if you think of your mind as a light bulb, the light's on when we're walking around shining in all directions. When we meditate, we are choosing and intentionally taking that light bulb and turning it to a laser. And then we're pointing that laser at one thing. It could be your breath. It could be the voice of someone leading you through some guided imagery. It could be your body as you do a body scan. It could be, if you choose, to be your devotional time. You could focus all of that energy into your prayer, or if there's certain devotions you like to recite. But the piece of meditation is that it's not a religious practice. It's taking all of your mental power and focusing it on just this one thing at a time. And then you get to choose what that thing is. So that's another one I hear a lot too. You could make it a part of your religious practice if you wanted to, but single pointed concentration itself, not a religious practice. So I hear that one a lot. Also, that you have to meditate in the morning. People tell me, I tried meditating once, and you know what? I hate mornings. It's so hard for me to get out of bed. I don't want to get out of bed to go meditate. There truly is no benefit to meditating in the morning versus other times of the day. The best time to meditate is the time you're most likely to stick to, and that it's easiest to weave into your day. We know this about building habits in general, right? Make it easy on yourself, set yourself up for success. You don't have to do it in the morning. And then also that you have to like sit on the ground, crisscross applesauce. You don't have to do it either. As long as you can breathe without, your diaphragm kind of being squished around. And as long as you're able to be relaxed, but not so relaxed you'll fall asleep, it works. So those are some of the big ones. Oh, and the other biggest one is that I quote, can't turn my mind off. And I'm like, me either. That's not the point. The point of meditation, I want everyone to hear this. The point of meditation is not to not have thoughts or to turn your mind off. The point of meditation is to work on single pointed concentration and observing your thoughts non judgmentally, which is easier said than done. Meditation is a simple practice. It's not necessarily an easy practice. The concept is simple. Sometimes the application is hard. Being able to sit with your thoughts and as they pop up, just observe them without judging, without me sitting there. And then all of a sudden I'm thinking about, shoot, I went to Target last night for bananas and I bought everything except for the bananas. What was I thinking? Right? These are things that pop into my mind while I'm meditating. Learning how to just be like, well, would you look at that? I forgot those bananas. And then, just keep it moving and continue to return to your point of concentration. So those are some of the myths that I hear or the misconceptions about meditation. So if you've thought any of those to yourself, you are certainly not alone. I hear this all day long. And I think that when you ask yourself, what was the actual thing that either I didn't like about meditation or that I feel like is the barrier to meditation? Because it actually has a quite low barrier to entry. You just need those few minutes and you're just focusing on one thing for a few minutes. And that's it. You don't need an altar. You don't need a special place. You don't need a cushion. You don't need anything like that. You just need yourself and a few minutes. That's it. Have you heard any other misconceptions or heard feedback from other people, Jess, about why they don't meditate?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you covered most of them. I think people have said it's just really hard, and I think it's really hard because they think they're doing it wrong, like for all the reasons that you just said. And I mean, I was definitely one of those people too. When I first started meditating, I was like, this is not for me. Like, and then it was almost like what you said, you're, with having ADHD and your brain, you're like, that's too hard for me because I have this issue. It's like I've had thoughts like I'm too stressed to do it. I can't relax, but like that's the most important time to do it. And when I have done it anyway, even when I've had the thought I'm too stressed out to do it, I'm too busy or whatever, they always say, all the experts always say that's when you need it most. When I go away from my practice, I don't do it every single day, but I can tell you if you let go of those judgments and just do it and know that there's no perfect way and you're just there to do the best you can. And I have better days when I incorporate it into my day. And I do like doing it in the morning because for me, if I don't do it in the morning, it's not going to happen. It's like exercise. If I don't get it done in the morning, it's not happening.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
Yes. And you know what? And I think what's so important, and you said that many people think meditation is hard, especially in the beginning. And you know what? Meditation is hard, especially at the beginning, but so is any new good habit that you're starting for yourself. When I find that I am reducing my sugar intake, which I know is good for me, that is hard at the beginning. And then, after a few weeks, I feel better. When I start, exercising again, or maybe starting a new, like doing more resistance training, that is hard, but it is good for me. And then you kind of find that sweet spot where you sort of get through the hard. Also, like anyone who started therapy before, really hard at the beginning. You have to kind of get the gunk out and then you hit that stride. And it's like you get the tough out of the way because you're learning a new skill. You're asking your mind to do something that it's not used to doing. We are used to being overstimulated, also trying to multitask like the heck out of everything all the time, and then just letting our thoughts go berserk in there. And so we're asking our minds to be like, okay, pause button. We're going to take this mental power. We're basically going to try to turn the amygdala off and turn the prefrontal cortex, which is the part like right behind your forehead, has to do with like higher cognitive function, emotion regulation, all of that. I'm going to try to focus and use the prefrontal cortex while quieting the amygdala and just focus on one thing at a time. That is hard. It will feel hard. And you have to really just, I find just embracing that, being like, this is going to be hard. Every time I've, had a child and I'm like, I have to rediscover a pelvic floor and some abdominal muscles that like, I don't know, are they lost in there? I don't know. That is hard. And also it's essential and it won't be this hard forever. And I almost see that as a sign of like, this is something that I need. And sometimes we have a little bit of that resistance to kind of the new healthy habits that we're building. So I want to hold space for that too. And then in terms of, if you're okay with it, Jess, going back to like how we activate the vagus nerve, because I do think this is one of the easiest things you can start doing, because it usually just takes, like, you can activate the vagus nerve in like under a minute. And if you're like, even 8 minutes of meditation doesn't sound good to me, Kelly, don't worry. I'm going to give you like a 1 minute practice. So you can work with your vagus nerve and your nervous system in general through meditation. Meditation itself is by and large extremely supportive of the nervous system. When we look at actual vagus nerve stimulation, sometimes it can be a little bit more fun, if you will. So you can do things like, we call it a lion's breath in yoga. So you take like a big breath in. Do you use the video for this, Jess? Because this is going to be like your
Yeah.
You take your big breath in. Yeah, this is going to be, the one, of course, that's going to make the little clip. But you take your big breath in and you stick out your tongue and you go, and that's called a lion's breath. And it's really good for vagus nerve stimulation. Because again, remember, a bilateral nerve that's moving very superficial on both sides of your neck. So breath works very good for vagus nerve stimulation. Even an inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth without the tongue situation is good too. Singing your favorite songs in the car or in the shower, that's great because you get that kind of vocal vibration, which helps to stimulate your vagus nerve. Even little light tapping on like the sides of your neck or kind of massaging in front of and behind the ear. Really great for vagus nerve stimulation. Another one that I love, maybe we could do this one together, Jess, because I think it feels really good. But you just take your hands behind your head and you like interlace them behind your head and open your elbows. And then you don't move your head at all. You're just going to gaze only with your eyes to the right. And you're just going to keep looking at the right until you get a yawn, which I have, or a sigh. And then you're going to do the same thing looking over to the left. You'll just repeat until you yawn or sigh. And then you come back to neutral and you release your hands. And that's actually been shown to be a really great kind of vagus nerve reset within those few seconds. And it's little simple exercises like that that actually help us to specifically pinpoint the vagus nerve and stimulate it. And then I think of meditation as being like the umbrella of nervous system support. And then you can weave in these little exercises when you feel like you really need to turn on that vagus nerve light switch.
I love those. I've never heard of those. Those are really, really good. And I love that they're quick too, because, I feel like that would be something great when you're in a moment, you're having, maybe it's the kids or maybe it's driving or something like that. Like one of those high stress times where you just need something quick. You don't have time to like go sit down and shut your eyes. So since, we talked about the vagus nerve, as far as meditation goes, say, for that person who's like, okay, I am new and I'm going to try this. I'm going to try 8 minutes today. Do you like to have people start with a guided meditation? Because I feel like that's a great way to start, because sometimes it's daunting if you're just sitting down and you're like, okay, 8 minutes. 8 minutes is a long time when you haven't meditated before.
Absolutely. I do think a guided meditation is a great place to start. If you're like new,
Mm-hmm.
you've never done this, just like if you were starting a yoga practice or you wanted to pick up Pilates, you probably wouldn't be like, you know what, I'm going to wake up this morning and I'm just going to make up a yoga flow. And you've never really done it before. It's like you aren't quite sure what you're doing. And of course you're not, because no one has really shown you or taught you anything yet. And so I think a guided meditation, whether it be on like a podcast like mine or one of the apps like Calm or Insight Timer or YouTube, or you can even pick up a book that will give you some simple instructions and then you can follow those. It's like when you go to a yoga class that has a teacher that's like, okay, move along with me. I'm going to walk you through it, or a Pilates class or anything. I think having that guide, especially when you're first starting, to just walk you through the steps is such a great place to start. Also for women, we have that constant mental chatter and that like mental load all the time. Like a woman's brain is, I think, very deeply reflected to like her web browser, which mine, I'm looking now, has like probably like 19 open tabs. And like all of those things are pending. They're all things that I'm currently working on, sitting there waiting to be completed. But I think when we have all of those open tabs in our mind, that if we just say, okay, now sit and do nothing, it's like you're just going to start thinking about all of this stuff instead of having someone that can kind of hold your hand through the process. And it's not to say that a guided meditation can't be beneficial for someone who's been meditating for a long time too. Because the one piece that I think is really unique for guided meditations is that it allows you to try a bunch of different styles. Because that's the thing too, is that finding a meditation that feels good to you is kind of like finding a pair of jeans. And you go and you're jean shopping and you're like, I don't know, do I like a high rise? Do I like a mid rise? Do I like I'm a millennial woman. I do love a skinny leg, but maybe I want to try like a boot cut. I don't know. You have to try on a lot of pairs of jeans until you find the one where you put it on and you're like, this is it. This feels good. This looks good. And now I need to buy it like every single wash and put it in my closet. Meditation can be like that too, because there's a lot of different options. And often a guided meditation, if you look for just like a topic, if you're like, I'm anxious and I want some help, there's tons of guided meditations out there for anxiety, and they're probably utilizing different techniques or different styles. And you can play around until you find the ones that really seem like they're your fit.
Oh, I love that. So tell us about your podcast, because is your podcast like guided meditations? And that is, tell us about that, because that's a really great free resource for people.
Yeah, so Mindful in Minutes was my baby before babies, and it started. I at one point had a yoga studio in a different part of the US, and I had to move. We move a lot for my husband's career. And so we moved and I sold it and all of that. And I had sort of created the signature style of doing a little guided meditation at the end of my yoga classes. And I started my podcast 7 years ago. So it's like geriatric in the podcasting world. But when I sold the studio and moved, I wanted to find a way to still be able to create that same experience for my students. And the only way I could figure out how to do it was like a podcast. And it's so funny because 7 years ago, the hardest thing about podcasting was like getting people to learn what is a podcast and how do I listen. And it wasn't even like necessarily a traditional podcast. Like you said, it's mostly guided meditations. I do expand and sometimes do like teaching and solo episodes where I just kind of share different techniques or talk on different topics, like maybe twice a month. But for the last 7 years, at least once a week, I've been creating a new guided meditation with a different topic or, a similar topic, but different techniques, and releasing them every single week. So I'm coming up on my 500th episode.
Wow.
So there's like then over 400 just guided meditations kind of in this library where you can kind of pick and choose what you need, what's speaking to you that day. And it's just something that I just love doing. And so I just keep doing it. And then I've kind of created this library. And then for anyone who is listening and you are in the fertility, prenatal, postpartum stage of your life, I have a secondary podcast called Meditation Mama, which I created during my pandemic pregnancy when I was just pregnant and at home and alone with a lot of time on my hands. So there's meditations over there, over 100 to support that really specific window of your life. But that's Mindful in Minutes in a nutshell.
Oh, that's so cool. Congratulations. It's a labor of love when you have a podcast. There's a lot that goes into it. And
yes. I know that all too well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm almost at 100. 500 seems like that's a big accomplishment. I did see, I know this is kind of a side note, but I did see one of your episodes. It said something about cord cutting. I know this is random, but like, what is cord cutting? Tell us what cord cutting is, because I feel like this is such an interesting topic that a lot of people haven't heard of.
Yeah. So I try to not dabble too far into the woo-woo on Mindful Minute. I do love it.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh. I personally love it.
Me too.
And so a couple times a year, one of those being like Halloween, do I kind of let my little woo-woo, freak flag fly? And we always do something. It's like cord cutting or, cleansing your aura, awakening your psychic gifts. So we have a little bit of fun during spooky season. So this year, I did a cord cutting meditation. And basically, it works with this concept of like we can have these energetic tethers to people or things or experiences. So the way that I think of it is you could have a cord or an energetic tether to maybe someone that hurt you in the past, and it obviously is still bothering you. Or you're like, I feel like I've moved past this, but I just oh, there's just something still there. And it's a way of visualizing like that you're actually kind of like severing that tie, like cutting the cord. And it can be a person, it can also be like a situation. It can be something where you're like, you know what, I still am really stuck to this thing that someone said to me when I was young. Because what we know now is that the external voices that we hear from the adults around us when we're small become our internal voice as we grow up, and like our, brains and our emotions and everything are developing, which is something I think about a lot now being a parent. But we do know that basically our internal voice is built by what we hear from the external voices when we're young. So, for example, a cord that I had to cut was this idea when I was really struggling to read because I'm dyslexic and also had ADHD, and I wasn't getting the support I needed, as everyone just said, well, she's just dumb. And this is like, granted, this was like, I don't know, almost like 30 years ago. Different kind of schooling system now compared to then, but that's just, they're like, well, she's just dumb. She just won't get it. But that's something that's a word that's like stuck with me. And I've had to do my own work and be like, you know what? I'm ready to sever that tie, not only with that word, but that like version of myself that believed what those people were saying. And so with a cord cutting meditation, you basically just get to that quiet place. You think about intentionally, like, what is the cord? And you could probably have multiple. But you're like, what is the thing that I'm ready to, it feels like I have this energetic tie to it still, and I'm ready to like cut the cord. I'm ready to like be done with it. And it's a little bit of like a ritual that you can do to then figure out even where it is in your body. So sometimes you can feel it like, oh, that's a tether right to my heart. Sometimes it'll feel kind of obscure. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's connected at my arm for whatever reason. And then you visualize it kind of being severed and then really saying goodbye and releasing that thing like for good. So it's called a cord cutting meditation.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'll make sure to link your podcast in the show notes because I think that's a good place for a lot of people to start. And it sounds like there's a ton of resources there. But tell us also like how people can work with you and where to find you. And I'll make sure to link all of that as well.
Oh, that's so generous. So the best way to work with me now is going to be through my podcast and my book. So Finding Mindful in Minutes or Meditation Mama, wherever you're listening to us now, or checking out You Are Not Your Thoughts or Meditation for the Modern Family. And then all other things, if you're pursuing like a meditation teacher training or like a yoga nidra teacher training, those types of things, I do offer those, and that you could head over to my website for yogaforyouonline.com is the URL. And then you can find me on Instagram at yogaforyouonline. And if anyone has any questions about what we chatted about, my DMs are open. I love chatting with people. I love answering questions. So feel free to send those my way over there.
Okay, perfect. Kelly, this has been so fun. I loved it. You're such a great teacher. And thanks for coming on today and sharing with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I've just enjoyed our chat so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.